52 Living Ideas. We are starting a new series here. I don't know what to call it. I'm calling it Deep Conversations. I'm calling it 52 Living Ideas Salons. In my mind, I'm trying to do two things. One, I'm trying to explore what a conversation can do. Okay, that's what I'm trying to figure out. How can I actually understand what somebody else is saying? Okay, and I'm trying to learn about that. And I invite you to do the same about how can one person communicate the context which is there in their head to another person? What is involved in that? Okay, so understanding of conversation at a very deep level is one thing. The second thing I'm doing is I'm trying to build common context between all of us and making it deeper. We have been doing that. We've done more than 500 meetups. Many of you have attended dozens of them. So there is a common base of knowledge we have, but by making it explicit, by connecting it to each other, by seeing how different people approach the same idea, I think the common context that we have will build even further and stronger. Okay. Now I'm going to be having one-on-one conversations with people, but my goal is actually I'm keeping all the people who are listening in mind, not just myself. Okay. Don't know whether I'll be able to do it well. Okay. But that's what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is that whenever somebody speaks, what they are doing is that they are painting a picture. So firstly, it's going to be a beautiful picture. You're going to see multiple beautiful pictures. But what I'm going to do is that I'm going to put a frame around it. Okay, I'm going to write captions on it to try to grasp it in my own way and speak it out as a means of giving everybody else a second look at the same thing, of the thing that people are saying. So that's one thing I'm going to do, frame and caption. I'm also going to pull other pictures from all over the museum and put it right next to this picture that you're doing. Okay, so you can see the connections between what is being painted and others. And then finally, the third thing I'm doing, and this is Mike's suggestion, is I'm going to ask one or two questions so that I can look at a part of the picture that you've drawn and say, hey, speak a little bit more about that. So we get more an appreciation of that part. So that's what we're trying to do. And I don't know exactly the direction in which it's going to go, but I'm going to take common topics. So today it's more general. I'm starting in the general way. You can pick up any of the ideas that you have found very useful from our past meetups, and we can talk about it. Or you can pick up two ideas or three ideas and try to connect them, or you can connect an idea to your life, whatever you want to do. So today's, it's much more broader. Next time, I'm going to make it narrower. But every time I make it narrower, it will be still a very large area. So next time it's going to be Jordan Peterson. What have you learned from Jordan Peterson? After that, I will choose different things. So we just had a meetup with Brian McQuay, and I was asking him, how would you compare Julian Jaynes' thought with Carl Jung's thought? Now, we have studied both of these folks, and you get a lot by asking questions like that. And people who are not that familiar with Jaynes will learn more about Jaynes. People who are not that familiar with Jung will learn about them. People who are not familiar with either of them will learn about both. And all the while, I'm going to try to connect it with all the meetups that we have done. So to put all these other, points around. So that's the plan. And let's see how that goes. So I invite you to volunteer to talk about the ideas that you want to talk about. Jeff, would you like to go first? I've seen that
I would. I'd be thrilled to go first.
Go for it. So it's going to be Jeff followed by Jean. Folks, please go ahead and type !! in order to speak. Okay, and I will call people in a very different order in terms of, I'm just going to choose an order which I think makes sense, and we will go with that. Okay, Jeff, go ahead.
So Shrikant, what I'd like to talk about for
and let me interrupt you for a second. We are going to go back and forth. Firstly, I have to tell you that Jeff has been coming to my in-person meetups for about a couple of years at least. And he has attended many in-person meetups and many Zoom meetups. So I'm really interested in figuring out what does he pick? What do you pick, Jeff?
Well, I picked something that I think is common to number one, what Brian was just presenting regarding the relationship between conscious interiority and individuation. And then it's also related to John Boyd and the OODA loop. And it is absolutely related to Louis Sullivan with the question regarding form follows function. And it is remarkably embedded and related to part of the core methodology for 52 Living Ideas.
Wonderful. So tell us.
It is the significance of questions.
Jeff,
because
what are questions? What are questions?
Isn't it? That's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that a question first is related to our almost innate and intuitive formula that form does follow function, and so we want to inquire, well, what do we want? You know, what is the function? What is the outcome that we desire? And therefore, what tangible achievement and what approach to achieving that tangible achievement stands the best chance, you know, the greatest probability of achieving that function, if you will. And it is at the heart of the OODA loop. The OODA loop is just questions. It's just looking at it and saying, well, what's happening? You know, from observation, you know, and then all of the orientation and decision making and acting and noticing the results and choosing what to learn from those. Those are all answers to questions. And the core methodology from the beginning, Shrikant, of when, you know, we were doing this together, you know, in Southern Manhattan, you know, you asked us to share something related to maybe a book that we were reading, and then pose a question. That was the methodology. Mm-hmm. And on this subject of leadership that I'll be initiating this week, I thought, you know, there's no way in the world that I want to be that I want to accept the responsibility of providing the definition and everything there is to know about leadership. It's a subject to be explored. And so I think at the heart of 52 Living Ideas is exploring subjects, which is based in this core belief that we can be confident, but we need to stay curious. That there are always many things that we don't know. And so we do have to say what we think. You know, it helps to declare that, to actually say, all right, well, here's what I think based upon what I know so far. But that we need to respect that there's so much that we don't know. Wonderful. That we only get access to it by asking questions.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jeff. I mean, this is a huge point. I mean, what questions do, I mean, for example, coming at it from another angle. Science is all about asking questions.
It
Moment it has figured out the answer, you just move to the next question.
So is philosophy.
Not so. I think that is different. Too much of philosophy is trying to come up with something out of your head and then spending the rest of your life in trying to argue with people to shove it down their throat. Okay, this is too little respect for reality for most of philosophy throughout most of history. But science is all about questions. That's kind of part of the science method. Because so why is it that questions? So for example, I have used it, you hit the nail on the head. This community is all about exploration. Whenever people ask, what is your meetup about? So I always say joint exploration of the world and ourselves. Okay, that's what we're doing here. And exploration is different from application. So there are two things going on. There is, you're trying to ask the question, what is it? What is it? What is it? You see, all questions are of the form, what is it? So you're relentlessly asking, what is it? What is it? What is it? Okay, and you're just going at it all the time. And you're doing that, you're not limiting it. Most people, now you have to realize that that's something which is quite contrary to our evolutionary heritage. Our evolutionary heritage seeks certainty. You want to say, this is what it is, and you're satisfied. You have faith in it. You just do that and you'll be all right. You don't need to think anymore. Questions, primacy of questions is a much later stage. Julian Jaynes would say that was an invented stage. There is a level of curiosity all mammal newborns possess in order to grasp what is there. But that curiosity ends in most mammals. The hallmark of human beings, as Jacob Bronowski puts it, is the longest childhood. And that is simply keeping on asking the questions. You're alive until you can keep doing that. So folks, the other thing I want to say is that these discussions that I'm having with individual people are just putting thoughts on the table. Please use pen and paper to keep track of your own observations about these. And we will have a chance to discuss it, okay? I'm going to figure out a way of, we're trying to connect what all of us are saying together. That's what we're trying to do. All right, Jeff, thank you. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Let me just, can I go for just one
Please.
thing? So I think that this is becoming more and more important for human beings. I think that as so many things are changing and changing faster, that the whole agile methodology is one of asking questions and putting out hypotheses and failing as quickly as possible, or at least learning as quickly as possible. It's all about being able to stay curious and ask questions, and being resilient in the face of change is absolutely not getting stuck in one's own conclusions. And then the world around us changes and we sort of defend our position or defend the way we are. That an orientation to be a person who likes to ask questions, or at least is willing to ask questions, is key to resilience and both an agile mindset. And I think it's becoming more important. And so I think that that's not kind of a side benefit of 52 Living Ideas. I think it's actually one of the things at the heart of the whole endeavor. At least it is for me.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. This is great. So folks, this is under power of questions, okay? As we put all these pieces together, we will then kind of come back and start connecting them, okay? We'll do as much connection while things are being presented. I'm going to go back and forth with everybody who's speaking in order to do that. And then we are going to try to connect all of them together. Next up is Jean. Jean, go ahead.
Yeah, so I want to share with how, I was looking for this philosophy group. I actually searched for a lot, first in Seattle, then Oregon, the other place. And I'm glad I found this group. And the reason I like this group because it covers so many different things and also how it's related to practice. And I think Shrikant, you mentioned last time, you said I'm very practical. And I found it pretty funny because I think among my friends, they will think just the opposite. Because all the friends in my neighborhood, nobody will bother to talk about philosophy. They will think I'm totally impractical. But among your group, I may be the most practical person.
No, that's a fantastic point, Jean. That's a fantastic point. What happens is that there are more, like many people who are just focused on practice, okay? And there are many people who are quote unquote philosophers who are just focused on theories, okay? Not, I mean, it is unique. That's why I call it living ideas, that there is no point having ideas unless it translates into your life. And those ideas themselves are living in the sense that you're continuously rejuvenating them through trying them out in action. So in that sense, like the OODA loop of saying, this is my idea, therefore I do this. I watch carefully what the results are. And no matter how hard, how much in love with my ideas I am, I will give them up to change that. So, thank you very much. But go ahead, Jean.
Yeah. So, for example, I think our life has so many facades. Like I summarize that mind, body, spirit. So here we discuss about mind. Then we have to take our body, which I'm trying to join this hip hop class in 15 minutes because I'm trying to get a new way to exercise. And at the same time, cooking for my family before I leave. So I just have so much things to deal with. But I really appreciate, I think it's so important we never just living a practical life without uplifting ourselves, because that will bring our mind, because I don't have religion. And I was searching for so many different ways. Buddhism, I searched so many different things. It just doesn't work. And I found this group is working because it gave me a new theory. And I found the most helpful actually is the Dao De Jing. It's just, it's so interesting. I used to listen to Tony Robinson and I joined landmark training. And when I tried
let me ask you one thing. You are very familiar with Dao De Jing. How is it that you're learning from Dao De Jing at meetups?
Yeah, it's just, I'm not familiar with it at all. So actually, unfortunately, when I grew up in China, I'm fascinated with all the Western culture. I read all the Western famous novels and everything, and I don't like the Chinese things. I don't know why. And actually, it just it's so funny. I just more associate with European culture, American culture. But when I hear and I learn Chinese culture, and it's fascinating, and I learn with this international group of people, it's just so interesting. And I want to share, it's just what I found different between Dao De Jing and Tony Robbins. It's like Dao De Jing, it teach you how to deal with things from inside out. Or Tony Robbins' teaching is from outside in. It's from all this stimulation, all this excitement. And I remember a coach said, he joined all the trainings, and it feels like it's like coffee. You have to keep drinking it to pump up. It's not sustainable. Not like Dao De Jing said, you have everything inside you, and it works, and you don't have to be so pumped up, and you can slowly take it to your goal.
Jean, that's an excellent point. I mean, that's actually a good summary of the Western approach and the Eastern approach. West always starts with the outside and starts to move inside. East always starts from the inside, the core, and tries to move outside. So in that sense, if you really get both of them, they're not contradictory. They're actually
exactly
directions. It's like, my friend Yasuhiko puts it beautifully. It's like breathing in and breathing out.
Yes,
you
exactly.
Can't really be breathing out all the time. Okay, and you can't be breathing in all the time. You have to move towards the core, and then you have to move out. And that is what is needed for life. And unfortunately, like each of these cultures is good at one or the other. So being able to appreciate both of them, appreciate the core values, at the same time, not get hung up on their limitations, be able to see the limitations too, and then be able to combine things in your own way. Go ahead, Jing.
Yeah, exactly. I think you have to work with both. It's like yin and yang. It's a balance. Just like we just talked at the Stoic group, it's about discipline and the emotion, connect with your inside emotion. If people are overly disciplined, they lost their touch with their inner self. They don't know how they feel anymore. But if people too connect with their self, then they don't have that discipline to achieve the things they want to achieve. So I think it's really the balancing between the inside development and outside pressure. So how you work in a balanced way, I think that's, anyway, I don't want to take too much time. I want to share one thing I found, during my travel, I found, what we learned from Dao De Jing, because when I was in the Yosemite, and it's the valley, have all these trees and it's so beautiful. It's like, oh, that's what they talk about in the Dao De Jing. The valley and the mother, they have all these things, flowing the water. It's just amazing, like how you connect the theory, then they become the real world around you. In Chinese saying, you have to read 10,000 books and travel 10,000 miles. That's how we learn. I think we have to put theory in practice, and integrate it into the life. And I think this group is, take care of my theory part, and I need to explore more physical part to integrate it.
Wonderful. Have a great time, doing your hip hop. That's a great way of integrating it. So thanks for just great observations. And I am very excited as you are about integrating Tao Te Ching into the meetups. It's exposing us to core of Chinese thought. I think more than Confucius, it's Lao Tzu that we need to take in the West. And I look forward to integrating the Indian thought as well at some point, which is also quite significant. All right, so next up is going to be Evanik. Evanik, go ahead. For Evanik, followed by Dave. Evanik.
Yeah, what I wanted to talk, what I got most out of it was out of all the meetups is going back to Jordan Peterson's Bible series on Thursday, and particularly the topic of trust and how I think Pegor brought it up yesterday, and he said that it's kind of arrogant that we think we don't need to trust other people. It's just it just means that you really think you just need to trust yourself, which in actuality is just not true. And you trust people every day, even though you say you don't. And another point that was brought up is about trusting yourself. And I think it was Katie that brought it up, but it was the thought of trusting yourself. So it's not so much, you can trust people and know that they may hurt you or that they may, they may be deceitful, but you got to trust in yourself that you'll come back from it. And that's how you trust. And I never thought of it that way before. So I thought those 2 points were good. And then it was Sunday, it was Kyle's presentation on roadblocks. And the biggest thing I got on that one was not worrying about somebody else's bucket and just worrying about your own when you're talking about roadblocks. And the question of asking yourself, why is the roadblock there? Is it there to warn you about something, like maybe you need to slow down, or is it just your fear getting in the way of what you want? So those are some of the major things that I got. Tao Te Ching and flow always have been great. I think they both kind of go hand in hand in terms of, bringing everything that we've learned in 52 Living Ideas together. It's just like, flow and water and, and of course, I can't say his name, so I'm going to say MC, his study on how to keep
Chick sent me high.
I can't say it. I hear you, and then it'll come out totally different when I say it. So I'm just going to go with what Joya usually says is MC. When he talks about how to get in the flow and stay in flow, and I thought that was fascinating. I actually gifted the book to one of my friends because it was just so fascinating, and how he talks about how when you're in flow, it doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel, um, it just feels like, you like time goes away, space goes away. Oh, and one more thing is I thought about that is going back to Jordan Peterson when he talks about work overall. Um, and the value of work, and the importance of work and what you get out of it, when you put yourself into something and you get something out of it, like how great that is. So those are the things that I've been getting. If I could go on, but
Yeah,
then we'll be here
no,
all
no,
night.
I mean, yeah, yeah. No, it's fantastic. One point I want to make is that, like, if you really understand something deeply, then your ability to appreciate something else actually goes up. The thing is that you have really kind of focused on the Bible for a very long time, and you understand it not as a book, but as what is the meaning of it. And what it is capturing is some fundamental patterns about who we human beings are. And because you have that kind of a rich base, whenever you approach something like Tao Te Ching, which you're not that familiar with at all, but you will see a pattern there, and you are able to talk about it from a base because you have that base of observations in your, on your own. You have made those observations and you can point something out, and that actually speaks for the value of these meetups for everybody. That the fact that there are so many people who have focused so well on so many different things, they bring some of that to bear on whatever it is that we are studying. And I think that's a very real and powerful part of these meetups. So thank you, Evanik. Really appreciate that. Next up is going to be Dave, followed by Joe. Dave.
Thanks very much, Shrikant. And I thank you for the opportunity to give a short presentation here. And it just kind of occurred to me.
It's going to be a conversation, Dave, okay?
Okay, all right. Yes, a conversation with you. But how to draw all this together, because it's such broad scope. My background, not to go too far, is an engineer in the telephone company, doing things like estimating the capacity we need of the network to carry all the calls. It's pretty intricate. But so most of my education was in math and science, physics, exciting stuff, calculus. But I realized because of the virus and in encountering you and 52 Living Ideas, I really had a chance to broaden my education. And I realized it's been about a year and a half. It's been amazing. Been in it from about the start. And I think I even remarked to you after 2 or 3 months that I felt like I was going back to college. But it's amazing all we've covered. And I'd say 2 categories. One is the broad brush of evolution of society. And the other is, I think, the topic of self-development. That I think if the two you kind of tie it together, I think they actually work together. And what really triggered me, we've been going through the ascent of man. And last week I did preview episode 13 again, even though I wasn't able to get on that meetup. And to see Jacob Bronowski stare at the screen or the camera and say, 50 years from now, if the education system isn't teaching this about where we came from, heaven help us or we're doomed or whatever. And then realizing that that was filmed 50 years ago and that he's talking about what we should be doing today. But that's what I think has been great about this journey, is seeing through Jordan Peterson and the Bible, that attempt to explain civilization.
You're on mute.
Oh, pardon me. Audio problem. My card starts again.
Are we all right now? Yeah, that the journey through the Bible, and then also it's been very good to look at the Eastern point of view through the Tao Te Ching. Realize even though it's a different approach, looking at nature and things a little more abstractly, that it's still, to me, an attempt to explain life and how we deal with life. And I was thinking, to get off track again, that in college, the liberal arts students took a course called Western Civ, or Western Civilization. Now, I know it's a little egocentric for the Europeans, but we really need to be, of course, looking at world civilizations. So looking at the East and looking at Nietzsche being a critic and looking at things from a different point of view, it's really been a wonderful journey. And like Brian's thing we just went through about consciousness and human development, to me, it's just, I've just learned so much. And as you said before, seeing the connections, like the man versus animal observations in The Ascent of Man, or in Jordan Peterson, or in Tao Te Ching, or whatever. There's so many connections.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. One point I want to make is that each person is different, and the kinds of methods that work for one person will not work for the other person. You need to take things in your own way. And I try to make allowances for that, but each person has to follow their own path and work with their own kind of strengths. Like, for example, some people are more intuitive. They kind of get a sense of the whole, and they can operate very comfortably with that. Whereas some people are, need actually things spelled out in sequence, and otherwise you lose them. Some people need to actually see how it moves. They have to apply it to their own body in order to get what is being said. And these are all different modes of being. And you have to kind of be patient with yourself. You have to work with yourself, know your limits, and do that. So thank you.
And that to me is the strength of your structure. When we go into the small groups, each person has the chance to express their opinions. And there, of course, are going to be different opinions and contradictions. And when we come back for either the lightning round or Q&A or whatever, we get to express our opinions and ask questions of the presenter. So, as I've said before, I really respect how you formulate and structure this. It's a great experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Next up, actually, let's go with Allison, followed by Joe. Allison.
So I came to this much later than a lot of you, and I really wish that I'd found this the beginning of the pandemic. Some of the things I was thinking I was going to say, some of you just said. I really like the whole questioning idea, because I feel like a lot of learning, it's very top down, where it's like the teacher's presenting the information and then everyone is supposed to just learn it that way. And I like the way there is no right interpretation of something, which has always been my approach to art and literature in general, that people have many interpretations. And the two things that, and the other thing that I like about, and I studied liberal arts in college, but I really feel like college is sometimes wasted on a 20-year-old, I mean, like, you don't have the life experience to really understand it. And you're sitting there in a room with a whole bunch of other 20-year-olds who don't have the life experience either. And so one thing that's so great about this is that everybody is older. Everyone's had all kinds of different life experiences, and they bring that to their understanding of these works. And then the two that I really like the most are the Tao Te Ching and Dante. And Tao really meant a lot to me, because I feel like there's this theme throughout it about—
Can I interrupt you for a second? I want to comment on the points that you made so far.
Sure.
So firstly, I think, education is wasted on the young. I think that's
Yeah.
profoundly true, because people think the way in which universities are set up, they think that you can get ideas first, and then many years later you apply them. Ideas don't work like that. Okay, that's one thing.
Yeah.
Second thing is that even the structure of the university is wrong. It is kind of based on like monasteries, where there is a book where all the truth is. There is this person who is an expert, revered expert on the book. He's standing on the pulpit and he's talking down to these lowly people who at most can somehow absorb what they can. Okay. That's not how knowledge is. Knowledge, each of us pursue our own knowledge as best as we can. Second thing is that everybody who's sitting in your class around you are basically have very similar contexts. They're the same age, they're from the same kind of, just general background, the very limited experience. So really no context whatsoever. Whereas the fact that everybody here is of different ages, they are sitting in different parts of the world, they have their unique trajectories of life. So that diversity of context is a huge thing, okay? And we have a structure which allows us to focus all of that diverse context on a point. And you can see it nowhere better than in Tao Te Ching. We're reading this 16 lines and it's magical. How much, no matter how much I study, every time I come to the meetup, I learn so much more than this. But so those points are fantastic. Please go on about you're saying about that.
Yeah, the first time I thought, how are you going to spend 2 hours on 2 verses? Like, I mean, I'm a teacher and you like plow through stuff. And I thought 2 hours on just this little part, but it makes so much sense because you're just going through it again and again. And there's something so peaceful about hearing all the different readings. And then I love that. And then I also feel like just like the meaning of it is, I feel like it always seems to have this theme of the best way to, like there's this theme of control in it. And that the best way to have control is actually to let go of control. And I think that really spoke to me a lot this year because I've been teaching through the pandemic. I tend to be somebody who worries a lot anyway. I tend to play in hypothetical land. And I can't do that. I can't function at my job if I'm constantly worried about all my unvaccinated little children, And I feel like it's like when you're in an airplane and you have to put your mask on yourself before you can put it on your child so that you have to be strong to take care of them. So I feel like by reading that, it's just really reinforcing that I just have to focus on the present and what am I going to do today and not go into this like spiral of like, what if this one gets sick and that one gets sick and then we shut down again. And then I can't go there. I just have to go, today I'm doing this. And I feel like that book has helped me to do that. And the other thing I wanted to bring up was Dante. And what I love is I absolutely love the poem. Like it blew my mind about what poetry could be. And I feel like I always, as I'm reading it, sometimes I keep thinking like he throws in everything but the kitchen sink because he's always like, here's Julius Caesar, here's this, but they all make sense for why he's throwing all of these things in there. And it reminds me a lot of Don Quixote and Moby Dick, because those are the two novels that are similar in that way. But one of the things that I was also really like the highlight of it, honestly, for me was the one day when Doug was filming from the garden at the Norton Simon Museum.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like talking about how the pilgrims walked around Purgatory and that was like him walking around the garden. So a month after he did that, I was in California to see my dad who lives near the Norton Simon. So I was like telling him all about this. And I was like, we have to go. I haven't been there in forever. And so we went and we're in the garden of talking about Dante. And the last time I had been there was 18 years ago. And my mother was dying of cancer. And we knew she was coming to the end. And I said to her that I was like, I was like, you need to live life while you still have it. And we should travel around and go to museums, and we should go to China and walk in the Great Wall of China. And she's like, are you nuts? I can barely get out of bed. I'm not going to China. But she said, she's like, all right, I'll go to a museum just to shut you up. And she said, I want to go to the Norton Simon because that's my favorite. So we went, and she was too weak to walk around the museum. But when I went this time, what I realized, so she sat in the garden the whole time. When I went, I realized, because I recognized the tree from the video, the very bench that she sat on was the very bench that Doug had filmed from.
Wow.
And that was just this really amazing moment, you know, of like, and what's funny is like, I know he was just having some fun doing it, but it turned into this really amazing day for my family, where we were like talking about my mom and talking about Dante, and my son, you know, she died when my son was only a year old, so he could like learn a little memory about his grandmother. And so I thought that's what's so great about coming together like this, is sometimes people will say something and then it's like dropping, you know, like a stone in the pond. It has this ripple effect that you don't always think of.
Yes.
But
no, that's a beautiful story. Thank you.
Sure.
I think that's very real, because what happens is these ideas are living ideas.
Mhm.
And if you are living them, then you transmit them.
Yeah.
What we do on meditation or Tao Te Ching gives you a little bit more peace of mind.
Mhm.
That transmits to everybody around you.
Yeah.
And that is very real. So it transmits at the kind of subconscious level, and it also transmits at the explicit level. So I think that's very real. And thank you. Really appreciate that. Next up is Maritza.
Sorry. So I had written down some sound bites here, but I have an inordinate amount of Jordan Peterson, so maybe I'm gonna hold off on some of that for the next get together. For me, you know, I started this journey with you, Shrikant, with Jordan Peterson, with the 12 rules up for life, and it just kind of snowballed from there. The most fascinating thing that I've gotten out of all the various discussions we've had together and learning paths upon which we've embarked is the concept of balance and the idea. So, you know, in Maps of Meaning, they say cows exist in every Eden. It will find you. And we also have, you know, in the Romantic Manifesto from Ayn Rand, there's a clip that says, man cannot escape the fact that he needs a philosophy of life. That is a basic comprehensive view of himself and of his relationship to existence. And that statement is something that I feel we embody every time we get together. We are attempting to define our personal philosophies in life. And we do it in a group environment, which allows us the ability to reshape and pivot in a manner that's a little less painful than when we do it by ourselves. At least from my perspective. I actually don't recall if in one of our meetups, the danger of the one story, Shrikant, was that with you?
No, I don't remember that.
I think I get it confused. I think I did it with
It must be with the Greater
with the Thinking Society. Yeah. Strong opinions loosely held is something you have said at several of our get-togethers here.
Let me interrupt. I just want to expand on that point. See, the way I see it, and that's, and this is fundamental to what I'm doing with this series. Okay, so think of these two people. Okay, these two people. Okay, it's usually like this. It's always like this, where there is some overlap between the people, And there is a whole bunch that is outside. So there is individual that I have that the other person does not have. There is an individual that they have, which I don't have. And then there is something that both of us have in common. Okay, so I'm calling that common context. And that context is at different levels. There is a context of explicit knowledge. There is a context of processes that we use. There is a context of feelings. There is a context of values. There is a context of facts that we know. There is a context of what we are focused on now. So there is something which is common, but there is something which is individual and separate for each of them. Now, the importance is that you have to have reverence for all those three. You have to revere your own self that is not shared at all with other people. It is important, it is crucial to respect the other self that the other person has. That's the only way for you to grow, actually. If you thought that you have everything, if you're a narcissist, if you say that is the world, you're cutting yourself off from the rest of the world. And you have to respect that common context, because that is what enables you to access the things that you don't know. So what we are doing here is that we are building the common context. We're trying to make the common context larger by actually learning from each other, so that what was previously part of somebody else's context now is part of my context, therefore is the part of the common context. As the common context keeps increasing, it's like you are standing, you're going higher and higher. You're getting a better vantage point from which to integrate more and more things. So what we're trying to do here in our meetups as a whole, but here more than anything else in a very concentrated way, is to increase that common context. So that it's beautifully put. And what happens is that there is an ethos that is there in the meetups where people feel free to speak their minds and disagree. At the same time, they're respectful and courteous of each other, and they will actually hear the other person. So that is what makes the common context grow. Thank you. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, no worries. So, for me, it became almost a giddiness when I realized that I was hearing similar concepts throughout vastly different topics. I have long held that the same, similar view of some of what you're saying is the idea of we need to somehow elevate both the individual and the community simultaneously, because, I believe firmly that that's our path towards righting so many things that may be wrong with ourselves, each other, and or the world. But I have never before been able to so easily conceptualize those thoughts. Through attending all the various discussions here with this group, it has allowed for a solidification of that in my mind. Like, it's something I've believed for a long time, and I almost was very apologetic in it. Like whenever somebody would say to me, oh no, the individual in this culture is strong enough, I almost felt like I didn't know how to disagree without an emotional response. Through this group and learning different things, the Tao Te Ching, maps of meaning, I have developed a way to logically state those things that I feel strongly emotionally, because I find that I see threads of it throughout so many various topics that it gives me this, I guess, a confidence, as it were, that my context, it's there, that in any situation in which I find myself, I can argue these points. And it brings me back to that, that strong opinions, weakly held or loosely held. Like, I am open and willing to hear opposing viewpoints, but I'm no longer going to shy from expressing my own, which are often the opposing viewpoint. And I think that's one of the greatest things that I have found in attending all of these discussions is I see the common thread. I see this call for the beauty of culture. I have often believed that. And, I come from a very chaperoned culture where, it's a group-centric mentality. And I have wrestled with how to find that balance. And there's that word balance again, right? And we talk about it when we're looking at, whether we're looking at the, even the Digital Life Center. It's technically, these are essays on, how we're transitioning from, the handwritten, from oral all the way through to digital memory. But in between the lines, in the discussion of all of those essays, is this concept of we need balance. We need to uphold the individual. We need to also uphold culture. And I mean, it's like, it's almost mind blowing that in essays that are on digital memory, I see it so strongly, almost as though it were in black and white.
I have to point out the most beautiful expression of that we have ever done on Meetup. And that was a presentation by a friend of CJ's. I think her name is Karen, and it's called Art Expression. Joe, if you could find that video, it's in the Comprehensivist series. If you could search for Karen or Art Expression. She's a dancer, and she put this point in the most beautiful way I've ever seen it put. He says, there is an individual here on the left, and there is others, the community, okay? You have two choices. You can be afraid and go like this. You're afraid of yourself. You're not actually looking at yourself. You're afraid of looking inside, okay? You're afraid of other people. So both go like this. When you move from fear to trust or love, you go like this and you spread your wings, and both wings spread out. You have trust in yourself and you have trust in other people. You love yourself and you love the community. You're trying to build something inside, you're trying to build something outside. Otherwise, it's kind of either fear or it is trust. So it is not individual versus community. It is either you fear both individual and yourself and community, or you trust both. Go ahead.
Absolutely, absolutely. I agree entirely. And that's another thing that we touch upon in almost every discussion is the idea that most things are life, and most things in life are erroneously viewed from an either or perspective, when we would be much better suited to look at them as sliding scales on a balance, as opposed to either or.
Oh, okay. I have to tell you this again. We did a fantastic meetup with Peter Berkman on the work of gardening. Were you there for that?
I think I was.
Okay. It's about kind of distinction between contradictions and contraries. Contradiction is always either or. You're looking at opposites, but life is not really about that. Life is about contraries. conscious and unconscious, yin and yang, mythos and logos, and they actually work together. And there is they are more when they are working together than each of them alone, and they need the other in order to flourish. Written versus spoken. It's not versus, it is with. What we're doing here is that we're starting with written works that we are looking at, and then we are having oral discourse on the top of that, which is bringing out far greater depth of the written material. So wonderful, thank you. Go ahead.
I think I'm gonna just, say my favorite line, just for an excuse to say it again. I say it as often as you let me. To say I love you, one must know first how to say the I. And that is one of my absolute favorite quotes. It's from Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead, which we did. That was our teaser discussion before we started the Romantic Manifesto, and it's one of my favorites. And I find that it just is a perfect embodiment of this concept of how we have to hold the individual in the same regard while we're trying to elevate the community and the culture. Like, you cannot drop the I for the group because it's impossible. You cannot get there that way. It's a and or equation in which you're bound to fail. It's like you get that null error.
Wonderful. Thank you, Maritza.
Thank you, Shrikant.
That was beautiful.
Thanks. Next up is going to be Joe. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I want to build a little bit of what we talked about on Monday with the idea of the Tao Te Ching, Stoicism, and then maybe link it to something else.
Just for a second.
No problem.
Folks, if you want to talk about what ideas you've gotten from this, from all the things we have discussed, what ideas are your favorite, how do you connect them, you're welcome to do that. Go ahead and type an exclamation mark or raise your hand in Zoom. Sorry about the interruption.
No, that's no problem. It's fine. So the Tao Te Ching and Stoicism, and how that actually not only they work together, but how they relate to some of what we just discussed last night with the idea of trust and ethics in Dante. So the Tao Te Ching, as we said, is the metaphysical. It is the actual how things are all connected, how we're all interconnected, and how do you live through nature. So once you understand that, then you can actually move and start to understand the more practical aspects of how you have a philosophy of life, which is Stoicism. And then when you have these principles that are incorporated into your life, and we have the cardinal principles in Stoicism: wisdom, justice, temperance, and courage. You start to have an idea of what action to take. And so you're making the links between these two, and you have ethics that are involved, and you have decision making and wisdom and things along those lines. So
I have to pipe in here.
Sure.
Okay, so this point is huge of Tao Te Ching and Stoicism and the relationships between them, because in some ways they are similar and some ways they are very different. And they point out to this point that we are looking at about strengths of the East, strengths of the West, and how do you put them together. So in terms of understanding of nature and understand its delicate patterns, Tao Te Ching is superb. Relatively, Stoics are children compared to Lao Tzu. They understand that nature is important. That's where you start. But the way in which Lao Tzu understands how water flows and how things flow like that is just profound. It's just intricate. It's just very, very deep. Lao Tzu understands that there is a point that is there within the sage, which enables him to follow the Tao. And that's the most important thing. Stoics start with that and then build everything that we need to do based on that. Lao Tzu is terrible. He's a child relative to that. He says, if I use words, I might fail to make it true to nature. So let me shy away from words. So whereas Stoics take even that uncertainty in their own stride and figure out how to do that. And they interact and create culture. So it's culture and nature. Man has both. Lao Tzu is stronger on the culture or nature part, and Stoics are stronger on the culture part. But when you look at the other, you can see that it is consistent, but you just have, seeing from the East, they have the germ of the culture. They just have the germ of the culture, but not the full expression of culture. Whereas Stoics have the germ of the nature, but not the full expression of it. But them together, see, that's the opportunity here. And that's actually what we are going through. This is a historical time where East and West, more precisely, West, China, and India are really having a dialogue. And there is so much that each of them have to learn from the other two. Not just as a historical curiosity, but something that needs to be deeply integrated inside us. So we become both West, Chinese and Indian at the same time, American, Chinese and Indian at the same time. So that's a great point. You made it last time, and it was just really focused on.
And I think it's absolutely the most important point because, especially at this specific moment in time. But last night I was thinking about this. I was like, okay, how does this manifest itself? How does this become a concrete? And it came out last night in the idea of trust when we were talking about that. How does a society actually function? So you have this idea of nature in the metaphysical aspect of things. Then you have the cultural aspect, the actionable and the naming aspect of it through Stoicism, how to act. But then what's the result? Well, the result in the discussion of last night was about trust, is society can fundamentally function. And it can actually, as a concrete, we can interact with each other, we can exchange ideas, we can exchange goods and services, and even these have ways of how they work in our institutions themselves. And so that's the concrete, but it starts with nature in the Tao Te Ching, and it is integrated with a lot of what we learn in Stoicism, and then you can kind of see it where ethics starts to play a role in how we actually function every single day. So I think that's the main thing that I've taken away. I've also kind of, Jeff kind of took where I was going to go with the idea. The most important thing is, how do you ask a good question? How do you really come to, what are the principles that you're using in order to ask a good question? And that is part of the OODA loop. But it's also, it's also how, and when I led a discussion on ignorance, something I'm an expert on, that is that how do you then, like, where he talked about.
Oh, I object. I'm more ignorant than you.
Well, it just means you ask a better question. So in the sense that, how do you cultivate that? How do you cultivate your own ignorance? And then you start to ask questions as like, okay, you ask a question and you say, what happens if this problem doesn't get solved? You know, what are the things that I actually need to know? What is worth knowing? So instead of trying to get the answers right away as to what, you know, you're discussing, you're starting to think about what is possible versus what is actually already known. And I think that has allowed me to really kind of grow as an individual as well. Particularly that meetup where he would bring in all the professors from all the different departments, and he would ask, you know, what would you like to know? They would tell the students what would they like to know, why it's important that they know it, you know, how they might go about even knowing it, and you know, why the question's significant to begin with. So I think that that's, to me, is you know, that's what this environment has actually brought us and given us an ability to do, even to learn things about the human brain, whether it be or anything about philosophical topics that CJ had talked about, taking multiple perspectives. That's another critical point that maybe I'll touch on a little bit more next week with Jordan Peterson, because I think he actually added the most in that particular area with how to challenge your map of the world and not be dogmatic. That's been another critical point. So
let me do one thing. The series that CJ is doing is one of my favorites, okay, because it is dealing with method. You know, how do you think? How do you think comprehensively? How do you correct your errors? What kind of methods? And he's drawing upon such a variety of methods that it is just stunning, okay? And he's only, I think, 60% done. He has another 40% to go for another 9 months or so. And it's just brilliant. So if you haven't watched all those videos, please do. I have actually created, created a playlist. Joe, once you're done speaking, if you can find that playlist and just post the playlist. This is for just it's called Collaborating for Comprehensivism Resource Center by CJ. And that, I mean, you can see that, and I also want to acknowledge, you know, there are so many people doing so much great work. Okay, CJ is amazing, but there are so many other people doing such incredible meetups, whether it is Brian McVeigh looking at Julian Jaynes. We had a whole bunch of people doing Stoicism meetups. You know, some of the top authors in, Stoic philosophers came and spoke to us. We had number of Jungian analysts come and speak about Jung. I think there are 51 meetups, if I remember right. So it's just incredible amount of material. So it is combining all of these and keep on introducing more from many different angles. So it continuously keeps challenging us. Thank you, Joe. I know, Joe, I can talk to you for a long time, but I'm going to go to Madeline next.
That's
Madeline.
quite all right. I like listening to Madeline. So
Madeline, go ahead.
Sorry, I actually had raised my hand for a point. It was a long time ago, so I'll pass. Thank you, though.
Sounds good. All right, next up is, let's see, Laura. Laura, go ahead. What are your favorite ideas that you from the meetup? Go ahead.
I have a lot of favorite ideas, I must say. And I can't particularly.
You have written them down. Great job. That's the most important thing to do.
I have them written all down already. I just have to find where I wrote them because, you know, it takes a lot for me to remember these things. Okay. I started I think when I started this, back when at the beginning, must have been February, I guess, of COVID time, maybe March. I think when I came in, you were doing Stoicism. And so I was really intrigued. I said, wow, I really relate to that. I am a Stoic. I know I am, always have been. My daughter recognized it. So this is really, I feel good. I have a link to this. That may have been a mistake. I'm not sure, but anyway, wasn't very, anyway, so I really liked function to form, although I sort of see form to function in my world as an artist, but I like that very much. I gravitated. Systems, very much. OODA loop, that was me. Then I sort of had a fascination with Bucky and all of that. And I guess Sullivan fits into that period now too, in some way. So I like him in there. And Jung interested me. And these are all things that like I said, in my world, as when I worked in school and developed curriculum and tried to come up with it, I think all of these things were part of my work, whether I didn't necessarily define them as this philosophical thing or this or that, but they were all embedded in everything I did. And as I always said, it comes from the ground up, what the needs of the students were and how I could translate what they wanted, what their dreams were, what, I want to be an architect, I want to be, they had big dreams and little ability. So how could I tie that little ability to this big dream? And so I made summer programs, here's an architect group, this is that, and I'm doing Algebra 1, an architect group, and so on. So I did all these kinds of things. And I tried very hard to make these kids believe that they could do whatever they wanted to do if they just worked hard. And of course, it was all through developing the right stuff. And I think that, so that's all that. But that, I feel like now when I think about it, it was all kind of going inward. And we talked about going outward. And I think when we hit the Tao, that was what I see as when it all goes outward. And I see, when I think about the Tao, and I guess why I gravitate to it, it's just his words. It's the way that he makes it all make sense somehow, 4 or 5 words. It just captures the world and it makes it, I don't know. And he brings it around for me and somehow it all makes sense and makes my life make sense in a very cogent, nice way. And tell you what, I need that right now. So I'm very happy to live in the world of the Tao as long as I can. And nobody's going to do anything to make me feel any better or worse about it. I mean, you may make me feel better, but you're never going to make me feel worse. So thank you all. And I'm just going to stay on this ride as long as I can. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Next up, let's see. It's going to be Kevin, Jyoti, Michael, and Mike. Kevin.
Thank you, Shrikant. Yeah, I remember last year first meetup a calendar member. It's at least it's talk about polymath and comprehensive. That's very impressive. Other than that, basically each meetup I can learn at least one idea and get multiple perspectives from individual speakers, not just presenter. And it's also inspired me to rethink my thought and reorientate my view and update my knowledge for sure. I don't want to go into a specific, but from my notes, from the switch on Monday, meditation, you can bring your memory, and comprehensive and polymath, neuroscience, and it maps of meaning beyond order, self-improvement, and more. And from personal authors, from Jordan Peterson, Carl Jung, Julian Jaynes, Louis Sullivan, and we talk about Nietzsche and Lao-Tzu recently. I found the 2 speakers I'm crazy thinking, it's like yin and yang. Lao-Tzu's idea like a yin, and it's like a source. Then Nietzsche points so active, it's like yang. So they can, match each other, perfectly in my mind. And by the way, I was very appreciating lots of people like Dota Jing, same to me. And a lot of things we need to learn. Then if we could, use bring their idea and words to modern, use map their idea, and that's will be great. The words, what we currently get translation and is from two. It's already translated, so mistranslation and idea, and each word, you see Chinese character words, they already change meaning. Some word not using, some word change meaning. Some word it's politics, and fragment TND, we normally translate heaven, earth. I prefer sky or land or ground, I'm not sure, so for me struggling, try get it best. Yeah. By the way, just now we use a two-person. Imagine that use your both hand. We could metaphysically compare two culture, two religion, two country, different ideology, different idea. So here, one way we can choose one is over another one. And just now I mentioned that I'm immigration. Like I'm try to learn lots of Western opinion, history, everything, even language. Currently speak English. That's one we consider that advanced. However, if from West look to East, we consider maybe it's obsoleted or undeveloped. Even from our own perspective, originally, maybe, okay, we need to learn from the West. Hey, slowly, surprisingly, when we go in West, always slowly realize I each have something to offer, to rethink. And that's one aspect. I use a couple of words like now we use either immiscible or immiscible. For example, water is immiscible with sunflower oil. That could be, it's a real case. If you do something, they can mix it together. And yes, that's my view. I not just find a common ground, we grow together. And fundamentally, we are human. We should talk each other. Thank you.
Wonderful. Kevin, I really appreciate you being here. Again and again, you bring in kind of the Chinese way of thinking, on many, many different things, actually. It's a different philosophical way of thinking, which is like a non-contradictory, like of this dance of yin and yang. And you talk about that in all kinds of contexts. Okay, and you bring up that point. So really appreciate that. I also appreciate, your participation in Dao De Jing, because really having that cultural background helps a great deal, because these ideas are not by themselves. They have a rich cultural context behind them. So to have few people like you, Jason, and others bringing that, and you may not even realize it because it can be very, very subtle, but it can be very profound, and people can look at it and say, oh, he's approaching it in a different way than I am. And so that's the beauty of having a conversation like this, that you will not realize what value you're getting, or you will not realize what value you're giving. But just by the fact that you are honestly expressing your deeply held ideas and thoughts, somebody else can pick up something. If they are observant, they can pick up something. So really appreciate that.
I want to add the last one. I forgot to mention, Shrikant yourself. You are the driver seat. Then connect ideas every time. That's that's the something behind you. like yourself, you not realize you how much you give inspiration to others and for yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, it's very difficult to have a perspective on yourself. So thank you. Next up is going to be Jyoti. Jyoti, go ahead.
Hello all.
Hi.
I'm finally here. Hi. Firstly, I have to apologize, Shrikant. I'll start with that apology.
Why?
Because I always run away from here after 11.
That's all right. I was just teasing you. You can leave whenever you want. I know
okay,
you need to
I
sleep.
can
I
stay
know you
after
have a
11.
dog which is very insistent. So you're dealing with all of that. Go ahead.
Thank you. This is really has become one of my favorite forum. And I'm an old dog, but I can learn new tricks. I have realized that I can. I still have something in me. When I first started here, it's almost a year. Can you believe it? It was last July, end of July, I started. So I came out from the very bad circumstances, as you know that. So my mind was not totally on here, but I started to, and firstly, I didn't think anybody would understand me because my circumstances were so unique and so different than everybody else's. The life journey has slapped me here and there, but I got here. So, but then I realized very slowly and very gradually, I realized, hey, these people are down to earth. They may not have gone through my kind of circumstances, but they have gone through something in their life. So I became very comfortable. And with having said that, I would say before I came to this forum, I had wide experience, and my university experience, I'm sorry, was not like Allison's. They prepared me for, mingling with diversity and different age groups and what have you. So I had that background in me, and I brought it here in the United States, and that helped me to adapt very well. And I have some very good Indian friends and some very, very good American friends. Having said that, I would say that I have enjoyed a hero's journey. I think that's how I started. And what I gathered from there is what Jordan Peterson is saying and what we discussed on the overcoming the roadblocks and what we talked about a little bit, we touched with Michael Omori's concentration and attention. So I do enjoy very practical presentations. Michael's was very practical. Kyle's was very practical. Practical in the sense there are no strict theories, theoretical background behind it. They are what is happening to a common person and how to proceed from there. And I think I relate to that kind of a thing very well. Dowjing interested me, but I will tell you, the translations, multiple translations, I just could not take it because I have so many things to do during the daytime, and to sit there and skim and scan like, okay, this translation is a little better, what I'm going to present. So I had to back off. And also because coming from the Eastern culture, I have those embedded in me. Very little do I realize that I have done things in my life because of them, and they are still with me. I can say all I want to say, that I'm Americanized, and which is true, because in terms of my social, I am Americanized. But when it comes to my spirituality, I'm still where I was back home in India. So listening to him, Dowjing's, different chapters, and bringing home concept of water and nature and earth and all that, it makes me feel very cozy. Yet at the same time, I'm aware of them. So now coming back to my favorite and your favorite, Louis Sullivan. You know how I have been very loyal attendee there. I have almost attended, maybe missed one or two maybe. I like the presenters, how they read the lines. That touches my heart. Rupali brings her practical experience from the school, from Madame Montessori, and how she connects it with Louis Sullivan. And all those things I may not be able to articulate, but they do something to me. And I feel like I'm getting closer and closer to Louis Sullivan. And I read with, and I not only like that how he enchanted he was with nature and with the soul behind the architecture, that there's a man behind it. It's also how his mind works, his brain, how it works. And he is so intelligent that I, being a school psychologist, I can say, gee, I could have tapped these skills in my children. His thinking is so spontaneous and simultaneous that he will take the information and he'll process it so fast, and he deduces the logic behind it. And again, he was doing that when he was very young. And that fascinates me as a professional, as a human being, and as a person who lives as a contributing member of the society. So I have a lot of respect for that.
Let me just comment on that. I'm glad you you talked about Louis Sullivan, because that's definitely one of my favorites personally, because Louis Sullivan has probably had more impact on me than anybody else, any other thinker. And I've always struggled to communicate Louis Sullivan's ideas to people. And actually, Sherry just texted me yesterday. She says, what are we going to do when autobiography ends? And are you happy with what we are doing? How we are trying to communicate Louis Sullivan's ideas. And I think what we have done is truly magnificent. Firstly, for me, it is just pure joy, because I love to spend time with Sherry and Rob and Rupali and Joya and Maritza. I would do that any day. I would take any opportunity. And normally I would get to do that only once in a while. So for us to be focused on things that we really, really care about and just talk about it week after week, we would just do that, just regardless of anybody else, okay? The second thing is that this is the connection between the written word and the oral word, because the oral word, spoken word, is embodied word. So you are seeing the person, you're seeing the character of the person. The words, there are gestures, your movements. There is the tone of the voice. There is the pattern of emphasis that is going through the voice. And the words are riding on the top of that, capturing all these patterns. So they are the forms for the function of the human mind grasping something. When you're reading a book, all you have is forms. And you kind of have to, if you want to really get it, you have to recreate that yourself. And here, there are a bunch of living people actually doing that for you. And so I'm just delighted that so many people, you, Joe, Maritza is new to Louis Sullivan, Avanique, so many people, Mike, are, they've really gotten it. So I think, we're doing something special because, I think that, see, I have gratitude towards people. Anybody I learn anything from, I have gratitude for it. And somebody from whom I have learned so much, I have just profound gratitude. So for me, this is a way of doing justice to Louis Sullivan. Instead of him being just one of the historical figures, make sure that his ideas are living. And that's what we've been able to do. And thank you very much, because it's like your entire expression and your entire actions and your words and everything just shows it. Thank you, Jyoti.
Can I make another point?
Please.
Okay, and then I will end. I don't want to be too wordy here. I want to thank you for providing a format for the breakout rooms. I have learned so much from these people here, and they have been so encouraging towards me. I mean, there were 3 or 4 people when I would say something like, I don't know where I am, what I'm doing, and they have chimed all together to say to me, you're doing good. You're doing a lot. Don't underestimate yourself. And I mean, they had given me suggestions, what else I could do, how I could move forward if I was not satisfied with what I was doing. But like Kevin the other day, he said to me, okay, you're doing this. I already counted 5 things, Jody. I said, but I don't have a goal. Yes, Rupali, hi. So, but I want to have a goal, which in the flow, when I was listening to Marissa and Joya and everybody else, they were saying, you need to have a goal in life, which is not too strenuous that you will get away from it, and not too easy that you'll get bored of it. And I said, I've been having these goals, and now I think I can use some challenge a little bit. And Kevin said to me, why do you need a challenge? You're retired, take care. So what I'm going to say is that, I have met some lovely, lovely people in the breakout rooms, and they are my virtual friends, but who knows, one day they will be my friends. I mean, Joe, luckily he's in Philly area. He and I have been friends forever now. And Rupali, I mean, you touched my heart. You're my sweetheart. So there are a lot of people over here who have touched me in many ways, by their knowledge, their expertise, their empathy, their sympathy, and they're just general mannerisms. It's just a beautiful forum for anybody to get into. Thank you, Jeff, for yesterday. You encouraged me too. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Jyoti. And that's a huge point. I mean, it's just amazing people show up here, and the format is such that people can interact with one another at so many different levels. Not only can they communicate, like make a presentation of something that they have been studying for so long, they can ask questions, they can give answers to the questions, they can interact with each other in the breakout rooms, they can go ahead and collect all the questions. We can all work together to collect all the questions we can possibly collect on a topic, and then we can try to answer all of them. So it's just, but there is a kind of human to human connection. And what we're trying to do is that we are trying to be human. We're trying to say, okay, what can human beings do? Let's see what's possible and make a little bit of progress on that. And I think this new series that I'm doing on Fridays is designed to do that, to build that common context, keep on building, because it's basically people who are coming to multiple meetups, who are kind of beginning to see patterns together, and everybody else is seeing the patterns, and they are realizing, okay, everybody is seeing this, kind of similar patterns, and they're all working this way. And this is, and so it's a very rich way of approaching life. I don't know why we did not do this. I started doing this with COVID. And I think that this is one of the legacies of COVID, that I'm able to do this with so many people, so many good people from so many places. And it is very rich. And thank you, Jyoti. Next up is going to be Judith, followed by Rupali and Mike. Judith.
Okay, so I have been attending your meetups for almost a year now. And, several a week, nothing like Joe or Madeline or Jyoti, but there's just always more that you offer than I could possibly fit into my schedule. But So sometimes I, go and at a different time, watch the videos of the past ones, and I found great things there. So you did a good job selling Lewis Sullivan just now too, by the way. So every time you will either have a speaker, there's a topic, something that we've watched or read, and then you typically, present a discussion or observations before we all ask our questions and comments and things like that. So I always learn I always learn new things. And during any week, no matter what it happens to be, I'm always making links, even between topics, even if they're completely different topics. There's always some threads that come together for me. So I really enjoy that. And also, I've noticed that I've been better able to identify my goals, my personal goals, and implement actions better through just what is happening, because so many of our topics talk about the importance of, action, just not all ideas, but you have to implement, you have to be a different, better person if you want to grow, right? So that's been very, very helpful. The other thing I wanted to say is that, in regular life, you never really get to talk to people at this depth. And you might know people better in many ways, but your meetups just cut through all of that formality and other stuff around it, and get right through to an idea and just zoom right in so that people are sharing everything of their heart and mind for that idea. And there's so much to learn that way, including the young people who you've had present. There was someone on the weekend, I forget, Roblox, was it? I mean, I was like, how old is this person? He called himself a young whippersnapper. And I was like, yeah, you're like, I mean, like when I was your age, I wasn't even halfway there. So it's very impressive. But this is the thing that I'm always, this subtle thing always happens to me, is when I begin to hear all the different ideas coming in after you've presented a topic from people. It's not so much, well, there, of course, the specific ideas that are new or useful and helpful, but it's the fact that they've taken the same topic that I just listened to with them, or the same words that I just read with them, and they're just approaching it slightly differently. Even if we agree or disagree, it doesn't even matter, even if there's agreement, it's the way that I can see when people present things, that they're observing the world just in a slightly different way. I mean, the conclusion might be the same, but they pick things up and see it differently. Each person is so unique that way. And so when I walk out into the real world and I have maybe more superficial relations with people, I have developed a better appreciation for people's individuality, even if I don't know what it is. I know it's there. So I wanted to thank you for that. And I think, the Tao Te Ching keeps coming up.
Let me comment on this. You've made two really profound points. One is that here we are doing communication with each other, which is far deeper than people normally do, with the exception of close friends and family. Generally, everybody has a handful of people that they can talk to at this level. But these are the people that you have earned over a lifetime, handful of people. But this, you are able to do that in a context where you've just appeared here, and suddenly you're able to have this level of communication with total strangers. And it is magical. Like, many people who are new and who are observant can say, what is this? How is this possible? Okay, that's the same kind of response I got for my New York in-person meetups. It's kind of like the Starbucks has had the idea of the third place. It's not your business. It's not your family. It's not your home. It's a third place. So this is like a third place. Everybody who is here have come here for a particular purpose. So this idea of kind of exploring the world, of saying that, kind of feeling the awe towards the world itself and towards ourselves as being, and then saying that let us explore that. It's good to explore that. And that's important. Let us do that. And you see everybody doing that. So it actually, you are operating at a very deep level of conversation. And the second point that you're making, so what it is pointing to is this commonality, that the values we hold in common, the ideas that we hold in common are very significant. This idea of just joint exploration of the world, that's a very deep idea. There's lots of implications. The other part of that is that the other point that you're making was that because we are doing that, we actually learn to appreciate individuality better. Here you can see, as you're saying, that it's Dao De Jing, and so many people are focusing on it in so many angles, maybe slightly different, some radically different, and you get a sense of the variety of perspectives that human beings can have. And then you carry it to the rest of your life, of actually respecting the individuality in human beings. The grocery store clerk that you're encountering is also a human being, and they too have that, and all of that is apparent. So thank you very much. Go ahead, Judith.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm really pretty much done. I'm just, the Tao Te Ching was the best example of where that happens, because you are only taking a couple of lines, and yet you can, start to listen to people. And so sometimes I'll read it over and I'll be like, yeah, but then I start to listen. Oh, yeah. Oh, really? And, it's just like, you just start to realize that, and so those are just a few lines. So now when you're talking about bigger things, you just realize. And so then when you meet people and you go out in the world, well, maybe they aren't thinking all deep things all the time like we are. Maybe they're not, I don't know, but they have a perspective, they come from a place, it comes from somewhere. And it isn't just, you can't just slap it away. It has a history. It comes from somewhere. You have to respect that.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. Next up is Rupali, followed by Mike. Rupali.
Thank you, Shrikant. And I echo the same sentiment about this platform for giving us all this opportunity to think and to talk and, share ideas. I remember our chats back in Stanford.
Yes, see, Rupali is a dear friend. I've known her for, how old is Augie?
24.
Okay, so yeah, so 23 years. Yeah, I've known her for 23 years. Yes, go ahead.
And so we would have these chats in our dining room at a dining table. And, I did miss that for a long, long time since we moved away. And now this is great, because not only do I get to hear you, Shrikant, but I also get to hear all the other people. And I want to piggyback on what Jyoti said about making friends, and what Judith said about deep connections and deep conversations, right? Going beyond just the superficial level. So we were making a trip to North Carolina this summer, and I told Rohit, my husband, that we're going to stop here and in Philadelphia and there in Virginia and meet all these friends. So we had, and all of these are friends from the meetup, from 52 Living Ideas. Unfortunately, we had a flood at our school, and then, thankfully we had built an ark, and so we were saved. But I'll tell you what, that these meetups have made me a better, stronger person. I absolutely love the Thursday meetups. Although I don't attend them, I listen to them on my way to school. And the Jordan Peterson biblical stories. I mean, he just goes so deep into every little aspect, and the things that he talks about human nature and work and the way to build yourself, your character and your life. Everything is just so deep, and it makes me think and makes me a better person. And then you have Tao Te Ching, where it's just meaning of life, and it has helped me accept things which earlier would probably frazzle me. So I like those two spiritual, philosophical based meetups, because they just lay the foundation for everything that I do. And then in the past few months that I've been attending the meetups, I've read so many more books that I would not have read otherwise. And so that has been real. And I'm not just reading them, right? I'm marking them and able to reference them back and forth for things that I do at work. I will tell you, a special meetup that you did was the metaphors with Brian McVeigh. And he was so gracious, because he did the meetup on metaphors with you. And then I invited him to talk to our students at school. And he did a phenomenal meetup with them on metaphors. And not only did he do it, we have students from different cultural backgrounds. So they had metaphors from their languages, and there was a Japanese student, and the two of them just connected so well. So not only, were you benefiting us over here, but our students benefited from your platform too. So thank you. Another wonderful meetup that was very helpful for me was Certain to Win by Chet Richards, and taking strategies, the OODA loop strategies for running my school has been very helpful, especially during the pandemic, when the situations keep changing so fast, and one day this is okay, the other day that's okay, and you have to make quick changes. And
I two things. So firstly, Rupali listens to a lot of the meetups while she's driving. And once she was listening to some meetup, can you tell me the story?
So this meetup was about Julian Jaynes, I think, or something surreal about that part, okay? And I don't remember exactly. So I was driving, it was late at night, and in the meetup, I cannot forget, but I think Shrikant said, and if you want to say something, type exclamation mark. And I was still looking at the meetup, and then at that very moment, Shrikant called me and started talking. It was just
that was a new YouTube feature. So whenever people are ready to speak, when they're watching YouTube video, I automatically find out and call them.
It was like I had a thought, and then Shrikant just called. It was very, very.
But Rupali, I wanted to ask you, what is your experience? You've done tons of meetups on Louis Sullivan. What has that been like? Because that is, what happens is that most of the people here have commented on what they got from attending meetups. You have actually, folks, Rupali runs a Montessori school, has done so for 5+ years. And what she does is that she's taking Louis Sullivan's work and applying it to education. And she's been doing that. She's done more than like 15, 20 meetups, more than that, doing that. So what has that been like?
So it started with the Romantic Manifesto. And I was listening in at that point, and then I realized so much of that work, right, is related to education. And when you started with Louis Sullivan, although I had read it as an architect, I was looking at it with a completely different perspective as an educator. And it has made me more acutely aware of what children really need. And I'm more, I think, purposeful in the way everything happens now with children in our school, on campus as well as online. I'm able to articulate better what children need. And when parents are pushing for their personal whatever agenda, I can say, wait a minute, what does the child need? Let's step back. And because Louis Sullivan uses such beautiful language and wonderful metaphors, it's easier, it has become easier for me to convey that. I will say that, preparing for the meetups is not very easy for me because I cannot speak extempore. So I do prepare, and that preparation helps me organize my thoughts, has helped me grow in kind of saying, what is it that I need to convey to people? And I've learned a lot through that process, really learning what Louis Sullivan says, because he uses, his vocabulary is amazing. And you have to really see what he means by a particular word. So I've been really looking at words and then just the sense of life. Why is it so important to exalt man and to exalt nature? I think we often forget that, and it's easy to get carried away in the popular sentiment of, this is important or that's important, and forget that really what's important is all within us.
Let me point out, maybe you're saying, exalting nature and exalting man. This is the same issue that Maritza was talking about, kind of individual and community on one hand, saying either or nature or culture on the other hand. In Louis Sullivan, it's yes, both. So it's like you have to revere nature and you have to revere what human beings are and what we do. And it's yes to both. And in a really over the top way of expressing both.
Yes.
Wonderful. Folks, Rupali has done just wonderful work. I mean, I'm just very proud of what she's done. All the meetups. I mean, firstly, just running a school is so hard and so difficult to kind of bring everything together. Teachers, students, and most importantly, most difficultly, parents. Just making all of that happen has been, it's great. But the way in which she's been able to integrate that, like, somebody taking her own, kind of experience, deep experience, and connecting it intimately with ideas of design. So these are ideas. Louis Sullivan is about design. How do you design anything? And that's what it is about. And so it's really been amazing. And she's done a meetup. She's an educator. She's done stuff on Montessori, one meetup on Montessori. And I would definitely recommend that. Joe, if I could request you to find the Montessori meetup of Rupali and put it in chat for folks. Thank you, Rupali. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Shrikant, for all the work you've done. I mean, I've made great friends. Thank you. And Jyoti, Joe, Maritza, Sherry, everyone. And I like listening to Laura's feedback, Mike. All of everyone. I think Evanique has been joining lately, and Judith, everybody. Thank you. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you. And another thing for people who are regulars, who are so good, I strongly recommend that you do meetups. You talk to me about meetups that you would like to do, topics that you would like to talk about, because you get tremendous amount of value from starting to present. That's kind of a level almost 10 times higher than attending. So I invite all of you to contact me about that. All right. Last but not least, Mike, magical realism. Mike, are you there?
I'm there. It took me a while. We got too many windows open. I
Okay,
had
Mike,
trouble finding the
Mike,
mute
I
button.
don't know how we are going to do this, but let's try. What are your favorite ideas from this?
Okay, tonight's thing, I'm going to try and organize that in a way that we can get something out of it, based on tonight's meetup and all the other meetups we've had up to now. Jeff started out with a bunch of questions with how that questions are the important thing. What you see depends on your point of view, and I agree, questions are important. And Joe Bullock expanded on that, and Shrikant, you expanded on that even further. But to make this really useful, we need a way of organizing all this knowledge. You can
How do we do that, Mike?
What?
How do we do that? How do we?
I'm gonna give me a minute, then I might tell you.
Sure.
And then you can interpret what I said if it doesn't make sense.
Got it.
Or correct it. If you ask me questions, you probably aren't going to get useful answers. That you've already demonstrated that.
Okay.
You have to ask the universe these questions, and you have to organize the questions and the answers in a systematic way so that they're meaningful. You need to score the questions, you need to score the answers, and you need to connect all of these entities with each other. And the answer to that is you need a framework to connect and evaluate all these factoids, their connectivity and their relevance. Now, we spoke of such a framework in the discussion we had here a few weeks ago. You had a guy named Brian Kemple, who was a student of John Deely, who talked about semiotics. And I tried to get into that with how you create a graph database and build trees of all the knowledge you have. And we got a little bit ways into that. Now, Mark Stallman also had some words to say about that. There's this guy, which we mentioned in a different context, Piaget, who defined a concept of cognitive knowledge and cognitive behavior in terms of a schema for unstructured data that is constructed in the mind of a child or an adult or any of us. Now that knowledge is being worked on by a number of people. Stephen Wolfram, who we've talked about before, who was who left physics to become the founder. He was a graduate. He was a student of Feynman. He left the world of physics and created a system called Mathematica, which is which embraces automatas and a whole bunch of interesting things. He conceptualized such a framework. And Mark Stallman talked about that at the 30,000 foot level. Now, Russell Ackoff also talked about that and how you do that. Now, we, in the last session, the earlier session today, we talked about coming up with a theory of the conscious. And then another good companion theory of the unconscious. And that violates the rule of global optimization versus local optimization. If assuming you got both of those theories right, you're guaranteed that the result is going to be wrong.
Yes, that's excellent point.
And so the semiotics guy who talked about graph databases probably could. And Wolfram has such a database, not only conceptualized, but implemented.
Mike, do you
You
want to
log
do a
on to the
presentation?
system?
Mike, do you want to do a presentation on graph databases?
Yes.
Oh, you said yes, Mike.
No, that Joe's going to do it for me. And I'll
No,
audit
no,
it.
Mike wants to do it. He does. He really does.
Mike, your inner voice is speaking. You're conscious, and then your subconscious also spoke.
Yeah, this is your anima speaking.
I heard you too, Mike.
Well,
anyway, Mike,
we'll have to schedule. I'm not sure I can present that.
Let's work out an interview format. See, you are the most challenging candidate for me. If I can talk to you, I can talk to anybody, Mike. So I have to figure out how to talk to you. We have to figure, because the thing is that your mind is so expansive. Firstly, the range of your knowledge is truly staggering, because no matter what meetup you're doing, you're able to talk about the history of whatever it is that people are talking about. Okay, that's pretty impressive. Now, it is very difficult for me to handle moderating with you, because you tend to just go wherever the line of thinking goes, and it can go very far from, because I'm always saying keep on topic, and you start with the topic and you just go. It's just that the range, the length to which you go and come back, it's longer than what most people can reliably handle.
Well, I'm a user of these things. I know how to log on to Mathematica.
Let me finish.
Semiotics guy, Campbell might be a better person to give that.
Mike, let me. So you go like this and come back. The unfortunate thing is that the range of your thoughts, ideas is very large. So while you're doing that, you're going through like mathematics, you're going through, automata, you're going through all kinds of things, neuroscience, and you're losing a bunch of people as you're doing that. And as I am focused on, I'm primarily focused on the audience. I want to listen to you. I want to follow what you're saying. I kind of follow most of what you're saying, I think, but it may not be true. I still try, but we have to figure out a way of talking. But thank you, Mike. Okay, I want to bring everything together. Mike?
Yeah.
You want to make any closing
remarks? I'm an amateur in these things. I've used graph database, but that isn't my principal expertise. I don't. You probably, now that I've given you the key words, you can probably explain them to me better than I can explain them to anybody else.
But Mike, you in so many different voices, you just promised to make the president. Sorry, go ahead. All right, now let's do one thing. There is a person who has just joined the meetup for the first time. He wants to say hello. Michael, are you there?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, how was it?
Hi.
What's your impression?
Well, I just want to say hello. I'm a nurse who worked on a COVID unit for the last year and a half.
Well, thank you very much. Always.
I just left the unit. I'm getting into psych nursing. It's like I walked from a desert of my own thought, where I've read all of these books and all of these things, into an intellectual Eden where I find giants and I'm a pygmy. But Thoreau said, shall a man go hang himself because he belongs to the race of pygmies and not be the biggest pygmy that he can be? So
wonderful.
I just want to say hello.
Wonderful.
And I'll be coming to these groups.
Welcome.
I'm a little blown away.
Wonderful. So we look forward to your participation in upcoming meetups. Really appreciate that. Welcome. And I really like your comment, and glad you're here. All right, folks. So this has been amazing start to this series. Next time, we are going to be talking about what did you learn from Jordan Peterson. So each of these episodes on Fridays, we are going to take one topic. Okay, sometimes it is going to be broad, sometimes it is going to be narrow. And what we are going to do is we are going to just talk about that. And we're going to have a conversation back and forth. And I want to see both what conversations can do, how deep a conversation we can have. And I'm positive that we are going to get something really magical out of this. And we will end up building a deeper context. So for example, on the topic, just like Judith was saying about what happens when we focus on Tao Te Ching, you realize the variety of approaches you can bring to bear on it. And you're always surprised by it. I expect the same kind of thing to happen. So I'm going to experiment with the width of the topic. Initially, I'm going for the broad to see what kind of discussion we will have. And sometimes we'll go very narrow and see, try out all of this. All right. So that's the plan. And I'm glad, so many people joined and so many people have such incredible things to say. All right. Does anybody want anything to say further? Last chance. Rupali, go ahead.
When is Joe doing the meetup on If by Rudyard Kipling?
Oh yes, Joe, we should do that. Let's see, when can we do that? I'll find
Yes, we'll find a date.
Okay,
soon.
we'll just find some date and do it soon. I think it's going to be very good. That could be one of the, it'll have the same kind of impact. We can use actually the same kind of. Joe, do you want to just do that?
Yeah, I mean, I can do it. I can do it.
Yeah. So what we'll figure it out. But thank you, Rupali.
Thank you, Rupali.
Wonderful. Anybody else? Laura, you had something to say.
I would be remiss in not thanking you also, Shrikant, over and over again for all that you've done. You're fabulous at doing this. I've been to many other meetups which really need your help. I mean, you could actually start a business of teaching people how to do this if you have nothing else to do sometime and you want to make a little money. This has been fabulous. The audience is tremendous. I mean, it's wonderful to be among so many intelligent people. And I don't know, I wasn't sure I'd be able to make it, but everybody's been really good and
wonderful.
And it's
Thank
wonderful.
you.
It's fabulous to think about all these things all the time.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. All right. Bye, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye.